Hey, good people. Welcome back. I know it's been quite a long time since I've been at this YouTube business and sitting down in this chair. So the reason I've come back here is I owe you all a video or two or three or maybe more about the Lost Isle campaign that we had started earlier in the summer. So due to home renovations and various other things, I just haven't spent the time to sit down here and do this. So I hope you'll forgive me for that. But kind of in retrospect, it might not be so bad. It might be a little bit too over managing it to do one video for every turn that we did. So I guess the summation of what I'm trying to say is what I'm going to do today is I'm going to pick it up from where we left off and then move through right to the culmination of the campaign and tell you stories as we go. So I guess to remind ourselves of where we're at with this, I'm going to go and get some screen share happening here, and we will pop up a campaign map of where we left it off. So right here is after round 2 was the last video I did for you, and the contest was at that point, remember that we're doing 2 rounds per season, and at the end of the first season, we were going to contest the marshes right here, this little spot, D3. That would have further reaching benefits because although cities, towns, and mines and things like that all equate to a relic point for you, these couple of particular ones that are blacked out are going to be worth 5 at the end of it. So to fight over that, to pick it up, the last video, of course, had all of that action and how we got to that culmination. And then when we picked it up from there, we went into our summer season. Now, well, the fun thing that we did leading up to the end of the summer season is we led to effectively a 3-team battle. And we'll move to that here in a second. But in the meantime, I thought I'd come over here and show you our, this is a Facebook page that we use to communicate about our Lost Isle campaign between the 6 of us. So we posted in here any kind of trash talk. There's a few photos of events and then games that had happened. And this is what we used in addition to using Google Hangouts to communicate and make sure that we all got together. Okay, so now let's switch over to the culmination of the summer campaign. And luckily, our good friend, Mr. Malorian, was wise enough to do videos for a lot of these things. Now, what I'll describe to you here as you're watching his video, and also I'm going to put the links to these videos into the notes down below, and I'll do them in chronological order so that you can watch all these separate, and they'll do a better job at describing what's gone on than me talking to you here. Anyway, the point to this is that we're fighting over one particular map space, and it required us to do this as an allied contingent, so 3-on-3, but all fighting on 3 different battlefields. He was fighting against Lizardmen for the ultimate siege battle to determine the winner of it all. And that's the pictures that you're seeing here as part of his video report. What led to it, though, is there was a watchtower scenario going on elsewhere between High Elves and another Lizardman player. That was my ally, the High Elves, and my ally in this one was also, or sorry, my ally was the 2 Lizardman players. I was fighting against Warriors of Chaos in an underground scenario. Now, the way that this all patterned together was the winner of the watchtower scenario would come in and join the siege and help out whichever side his ally was. And the winner of the underground scenario would also join the siege to help out their ally so that we could crush them. And that's how it worked out. It was won by my side, which included the Skaven and 2 Lizardmen. The way that the random shakedown of it afterwards worked out was that it was the Lizardmen of the blue variety, and maybe we'll switch back to the map to look at that right here, that claimed that tile. Okay, so now we're going to jump ahead to turn 5, and this is kind of what it looked like afterwards. There's a lot of action going on here on this board, obviously, and all these arrows point to various different things. Suffice to say that it got a little bit chaotic after that, and we started to encroach on each other's borders. You can see over here in the southwest that the orcs have expanded greatly and built lots of fortresses and cities. The Skaven, unfortunately, due to my master plan's not coming together properly has pretty much stayed static and the same. In fact, there's a lot of retreating going on. That's what's indicated by these red arrows. The one good thing that I did do, though, in the true Skaven treacherous way, is this right here, C5, was the battleground that we had just fought over for the sake of the siege campaign. So I snuck in there and took this from him right after he took it. So big coup for me. The yellow lizardmen up here have been a little bit embattled, and they've been encroached on by some seafaring elves that have ducked in behind them. While the other lizardmen, the blue ones, because of some of my own intervention and things that I've done, has sort of kept him at bay. The elves have been a little bit unlucky, to be honest, and you'll notice these two flags here in the sea. That's because they've been scattered after losing battles or being forced off of map spaces. Luckily, at the start of every new season, they get a chance to rejoin, and that goes for everybody, right? So if they're scattered, that happens. The white team here, this is represented by the Warriors of Chaos, and he's just kind of doing a slow expansion and slow build. He's built an alliance with the orcs down in the south, and that's all gotten to that point. Now, so that brings us ahead to turns 5 and 6 of the campaign. And the way we culminated turn 6 is we all decided to have a group game with all 6 of us together playing a Storm of Magic battle. When we talked about this, I got to admit that I was a little bit skeptical. Having played Triumphant Treachery, which I always thought was a little bit smoother, and honestly only having played 2 Storm of Magic games in the past, I kind of disliked the idea that it all just came down to who controlled the most fulcrums and nothing else really mattered in the battle. However, this turned out to be really spectacularly fun. We had 6 fulcrums on the board, 3 on each side. Now, for those of you that haven't played Storm of Magic, remember the way that this works is that you can deploy a wizard in each of these, and the whole goal at the end, as I said a moment ago, is to control as many of them as you can, or the most of them. They offer a great degree of protection because they can only be attacked by 1 model at a time while you're in there, and you get a 3+ ward save. But the other important thing is that they measure presence and dominance for the fulcrums, meaning that if you control 1, then you can cast some cataclysmic spells. If you control at least the same amount as your opponent, then you can cast a 2nd level of cataclysmic spell. And then if you control more than your opponent at any given magic phase, then you can cast a 3rd level of super cataclysmic spell. And these are spells like throwing a 6-dice fireball. That was the popular one. Shaking the earth down, summoning up trees if you wanted to, decimating whole units at a time. They were really all quite a big deal. So anyway, after the struggles of this, and it was a good lengthy 5-hour game, I believe, where it was the Chaos Warriors allied with the Skaven and the Orcs, and on the opposite side was High Elves with both Lizardman forces. So as you can see, it's a shakeup of alliances from the previous go-round. I'm afraid, due to some unforeseen panics that ran rampant through the goblins, some ineptitude of the Skaven, and just not enough support from the rest of us to the Chaos Warrior side, we were the big losers of that one, and we got magically dominated, blown off the board by the Lizardmen and the High Elf team up. So that was that. So that brought us to 6 turns down from the campaign, and then we started to roll into a final culmination. Now maybe we'll pause here for a second to talk about how we were making moves towards the end game. Now all along the way, people are expanding across the board, building mines, fighting battles, and the results of those kinds of things are ways which we can obtain relics. Now, the relics in the Blood in the Badlands campaign are all vital for the sake of tracking down the focus of that Blood in the Badlands campaign, which was the flying fastness, and you'd fight a culminating battle for that. We decided early on that we were going to throw the flying fastness idea out of the mix and that we were going to just fight a big Triumphant Treachery battle at the end. And all of the relics that we'd accumulate throughout the campaign would translate to 50 points of troops, which you could then use in that Triumphant Treachery battle. Okay, so we started by doing this with a base of 2,000 points, right? Adding 50 points per relic, which you could spend on mercenaries or expand on your own army. Okay, now maybe before we move to the final battle, I want to just point out one other video done by Mr. Malorian, and I'll put this in the mix as well, of another group game that we fought. Now, we did this in the 7th turn, and the reason we did so is we had a 2-on-2 battle because we weren't really fighting over territory, and it didn't really matter. We had the orcs that had challenged me, and we had lizardmen that had also challenged the Warriors of Chaos. So we just decided to get together and resolve our battles at once, so that one side or the other would sort it out. So it was me and the Lizardmen that teamed up together versus the Orcs and the Chaos Warriors. And this was actually one point where it was just after the Nagash game, or the Nagash book came out, which introduced the idea of using expanded army composition for up to 50%. So we embraced that, and I tucked in a couple Great Seers. This was super exciting for Mr. Malorian because he had the opportunity to put 3 bosses on Wyverns and come at me with that. And I faced the brunt of that through most of the game as he ate away at my Clan Rats and Screaming Bell unit. Chaos Warrior fella took the opportunity to use this model right here in the middle. He used it as Galroch, the 2-headed Chaos Dragon. He was a bit entertaining, not a great factor as far as punishing us for the game, but he was certainly fun to see what kind of shenanigans he had to deal with and when he got stupid. And there you can see a good shot of the 3 Wyverns that all just kind of hung out together and bashed away and ruined my chances of winning this battle. What we ultimately decided was going to be the control point of the battle is, if you see that river that ran across, there were 3 crossing points on that river, and we determined that each of those was a control point, and the person with 2 out of 3 of those control points was going to win the game. And that's how it culminated. It was the orcs for pinning me in there, and the Chaos team that eventually chased us off of any points that we had, and that was the winner, was those guys. So maybe we'll switch gears here then, and we'll go to the final culmination battle, and we'll show you that. Now, this point right here, this was the tally of extra relics that a person had held onto after they used points to fill up their army. So I used all of my relics to fill up my army, so to bring extra points to the field instead of saving any for carryover for the eventual victory. Okay, so I had 0. So did Leroy. You can see the position of the other guys. The orcs decided to save all of their relics that they had accumulated and put them all there to give themselves a big head start on the battle itself. Now, this final culmination was a mighty Triumphant Treachery battle. It was a 7-hour affair with lots of ups and downs and swings and flows and other things that went along the way. Very fun to play throughout the whole thing. It was really good to sort of finalize everything with these guys and play it all through. I did some fun things, like with my Skaven, I used a lot of my points to bring in some Empire allies, which left me with 2 steam tanks and a Hell Pit Abomination. My other various big fat toys were there along the way. Some other things that we saw throughout were a couple of extra ancient stegodons that you normally wouldn't see. And the elves just loaded up on the most gigantic of 60-man strong Swordmaster unit. On the far side of the table where the orcs were, Mr. Malorian had gained an ability on his troll unit a little bit earlier that gave them the always strike first ability. The disappointing thing about that, as a little bit of a spoiler, is Those dudes, unfortunately, because of some positioning and stupidity tests, never saw combat the whole game, despite how threatening and frightening they were. You'll also see these little pizza tokens in the middle of the field. We used those as extra objective tokens, so that if you were near them and were in control of them at the end of each player turn, you'd score an extra few victory points for that. So as we move through the battle, and maybe I'll skip ahead here if I can to find another tally point. You can see that the tides are changing. The orcs have gained a little bit. Everybody else has sort of accumulated. The lizardmen are doing very well from starting from 0. They have nearly caught up to the leader. And as we go along, we just kind of updated this every time somebody scored. It was a really fun way to do it. This was Malorian's idea to put that together. So kudos to him for coming up with that, so we didn't have to bother with the Triumphant Treachery coins, and it was totally visible for everybody throughout the whole game. It also gave an instant update when people were trading around their Triumphant Treachery cards or making some things change, bartering for either safety or alliances, as you do in Triumphant Treachery. So maybe we're going to skip ahead now a little bit further. And after a lot of models are swept off the table, it started to look like this. And we are really in a position, if I can back up to that a second, where we got 4 out of the 6 guys that are really contesting for this, right? All within a few hundred points of one another at this point in the game, where it's all very, very close. The I Love PC guy, just to be clear about that, that's maybe I'll pause here for a second and explain. So Leroy was Lizardman. He was the blue Lizardman in our map. Okay, I'll maybe go back to this to show you that. So here's the blue Lizardman in our map. That was Leroy. The guy who's labeled on here as I Love PC, that was the yellow Lizardman up here. I am labeled on this thing as Dun Dun Dun. Malorian is labeled on there as Wog. The real Keith, he is the Chaos Warriors, so he was white on our map. And then the Dirty Elves, of course, were labeled in green. So, sorry, I should maybe explain that earlier, but there you go now. So as we finished up the battle, it really became apparent there was a point where Leroy Jenkins surged ahead of most of us, and I'm going to skip ahead again to the next point. He started to lose and had to start to pay people off to make things happen. And it really came down to the finale where I did a lot of bartering at the end. I had a couple of coups where the steam tanks came in and finished some things off that other people had set me up for. And the happy news is that at the end of it all, this was our final tally. And it was $3 grand for the messy Skaven, who looked like they were under the radar the whole time, but through much scheming and conniving and bartering and betraying all through, we came out on top. So that eventually was the culmination of the campaign. So maybe we'll pull this screen share off here, and we'll get back to this. So that's the sum total of it. I know that I kind of went through it very quickly there, and as I said at the outset, maybe balancing that off and doing more videos throughout the way would have been better for you as viewers, but I wanted to at least honor it and come back and talk through the campaign to make sure that it was all documented. Probably more viewing and better for all of you as viewers is go to the notes below, and I'm going to put in all the links to the 4 different sort of seasonal culmination battles that Malorian had recorded. And if you watch through those and you listen to his commentary, although you're going to get a very orky bias to it, you will at least get to see some of the campaign action and how that went out. If you have other questions about how things were played throughout, I am more than happy to answer those individually. If you want to post comments down below, I'll attend to those later. But thanks for being patient with me, everybody. And at least if you watch this all the way through, thanks for coming back to see it through. with me. And I think that's a good point to sign off. I hope you got some enjoyment out of that, because I sure did playing the campaign, and we in fact plan to do another one in the new year. And maybe I'll promise, half-heartedly at least, to do a little bit better job of keeping up with that and video documenting it. Okay, so farewell. Thanks again for watching. Goodbye.